How's everybody doing this morning? Our presentation this year is something that came to at least to the Northeast New England states over the last couple of years, and for some reason it's really an operational side thing, but I ended up in the middle of it. I think Jimmy here ended up in the middle of it also, as EMac. See if I can. What is EMac? The Emergency Management Assistant Compact EMac was established in 1996. Has weathered the storm when tested and stands today as a cornerstone of the nation's mutual aid. Basically, first time I ever saw this, was involved with it. Jimmy Smith, who's now retired from Pennsylvania, sent us a lot of assistance for a major winter storm that basically shut us down. EMac's the first national disaster relief compact since the Civil Defense and Disaster Compact of 1950 to be ratified by Congress. Since ratification and signing into law in 1996 for all 50 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, Guam, U.S. Virgin Islands have enacted legislation to become EMac members. Is anybody involved with it? Has anybody done anything with it? It works very, very well. It has some hiccups. First time you ever get involved with it, you'll feel some of the pain. EMac offers assistance during governor-declared states of emergency. So the first stage of it is your governor has to declare a state of emergency, or a neighboring state has to have a declared state of emergency. It's a straightforward system that allows states to send personal equipment, commodities to help disaster relief efforts in other states through EMac, and can transfer services such as, this is just one, shipping newborn blood from disaster impacted lab to a lab in another state. That's not something we've done, but we send equipment to help for snow or disaster relief. What is EMac? The strength of EMac and the quantified distinguishes it from other plans and compacts lie in government structure, relationships. This conference right here creates a lot of relationships with people, neighboring states, your group, the conference calls. Those are all things that start, at least a point of contact if you're having a problem. Through EMac, states are able to join forces and help one another when they need it the most, whenever that disaster strikes. Like I said, we saw it 3-4 years ago when Pennsylvania came. We were shut down. Pennsylvania came down with airport-style snowblowers help us open roads. We've been to Buffalo to help them. We went to Maryland and Washington, D.C. this year. It works very well. Preevent Preparation. We've learned, at least in Connecticut, we've learned to ensure successful EMac implementation with state emergency management providers. Usually if your emergency management's open, they're taking the lead with it, doing the request. And the request goes out basically in an email or phone call format to see what's out there. It goes out as, we're looking for this. We need help with, X, moving snow, moving trees, removing stuff from the road. Internal processes for implementing EMac. After our first run to Buffalo, internally in Connecticut, we've created our own internal stuff to be ready, to be able to activate within that short time period and be effective when heading out to whoever is asking for assistance. We haven't conducted training, but some of this is right from the EMac website, so training would be a good thing, how to get things together and move on, to the assistance. Activation. When local resources are exhausted and resource requests reach the state emergency management, the state sources and resource need to intrastate mutual aid, federal, private sector, and volunteer EMac. It's open to private sector. I mean, you can reach out to private vendors, which I'm sure people have. The more popular venue is to neighboring states, and you'll see why when the funding happens here, because the vendor's going to want to get paid right away. The state usually we're about a year out for getting paid. The state governor will declare an emergency or disaster, authorizing funds to expend for response and recovery. So you have your governor declared state of emergency, and he's authorizing basically the payments. The affected states, EMac authorized representative opens an event online in the EMac operation system, alerting both national coordinating state and NEMA that the requests for resources are going out. So that's how the word gets out. The affected state will route resources requests to the EMac team, who will in turn contact EMac member state to source the starting with the closest states. Obviously, you want to try to grab the stuff that's closest to you. Predominantly up in the Northeast, Connecticut may get hit, Massachusetts gets nothing. It's very diverse, and we're very close together. You wouldn't think it would happen that way, but it does. Potential assisting states assess their own risk, and if able to use their internal state EMac protocols to determine availability to assist. Pretty self-explanatory. They're requesting and assisting state emergency management agencies or designee complete the EMac request for assistance for accepted offers, which constitutes a legal binding agreement between the two states. And this comes into effect, you'll see in the next screen or next couple screens on the reimbursement. Once a request is complete, resources prepare to mobilize. This is, at least from my aspect, where I ended up getting involved the first time. We found out that operationally within our state, our operations side knows how to move within our state very well, not very familiar on how to get out of state, how to get permits, how to move down the line. It's critically important that deploying personnel receive a pre-deployment briefing and understand the responsibilities in tracking mission expenses and maintaining documentation and contact with the assisting state emergency management. This is one thing we did when we were planning to leave. We went through some heartaches with the tracking the expenses, and we're looking at doing a few things different in the future. With the nature of the situation, deployed personnel will likely encounter difficult living and working circumstances. Excuse me. This is something we told our people on the front end. You're going to run into some heartaches and some difficulties. Limited communication, traumatized residents, coworkers, long working hours, and primitive field conditions are just some of the issues. The ones we went out, we staffed enough to run 12-hour shifts, so put them on for 12, roll the people out, so when equipment goes, it's working around the clock, and we staffed it in that format. Deployed personnel assisting requesting states share the responsibility for timely processing of reimbursements. So it's your responsibility to get your paperwork done and turn back to the assisting state to hopefully, if they get FEMA money or federal money, to get paid on. Reimbursement starts with deployed personnel submitting their packages to the assisting state's audit, submit packages, and issue payments back to the assisting state. A state's obligation to, this is the big one, to pay EMac reimbursement is not contingent on federal funds. So you can activate an EMac, and if the feds don't step in to pay you, your state's responsible to pay the neighboring state or whoever came to assist you. Here's some of the activations that we did. In February 2013, Pennsylvania came down to us, and I'm going to tell you, Without them, we wouldn't have been able to, we would have been probably 2 weeks behind the power curve getting our roads back open. February 2013, New Jersey activated assistance to Boston. Connecticut didn't activate to Boston, but I actually got up to see it. They had issues, and it worked very well. 2014, Connecticut activated through EMac to Buffalo, New York. This was our first deployment of that EMac for Connecticut. We learned a lot. February 2016, ConnDOT and New Jersey activates crews to assist Maryland and Washington, D.C. ConnDOT, we sent one crew into Washington, D.C. and one crew to Montgomery County, Maryland, with a third crew that deployed 2 days after the initial crews, because we weren't getting the information that we needed. We're going into DC, we're going into very urbanized area, and we sent very large equipment, which was used. They really needed skid steers and smaller equipment to get down the streets. Here's some of the lessons learned for us. Ask questions. Requests usually are for types of equipment. If you understand the work you're required to do, you can mobilize the equipment best suited to fit the needs. Your neighboring states, if they're asking or are asking for assistance, they're most likely not aware what you have or what you have available. It's better to ask what work you're going to be doing, and you can size the equipment correctly.
One of our experiences with that was when we showed up at Boston. We sent a very large contingency of trucks and loaders and everything up there, and we no more than showed up and they said, hey, we want you to break up into 5 teams, and they had us like 40 miles apart from each other. Well, we didn't send up the infrastructure of mechanics, fuel trucks, and other support things like vans to transport people in and out of downrange for 5 separate groups. We figured that we're all going to be working in one area and continue moving along.
We didn't run into that. We pretty much, our crews stayed together or were put together with somebody from the requesting state to basically familiarize us with the area. But the second one here is fuel provisions. Up in our area, pretty much our trucks can range to wherever we're getting to so far, but you got to know what you're going to have for fuel there. Are they going to give you fuel? Do you need to, source your own fuel? We basically sent pickup trucks with 100-gallon, transfer tanks in the back to use on the farm, or the contractors use, just to make sure that we had something. And it actually worked out very well, because we were fueling our loaders and snow blowers and stuff at their work site and using a chase vehicle to do it. Lodging. When we went to Buffalo, we had information on our lodging. When we got there, hotel was full. Thank God there was one across the way, and the owner or the manager of the hotel had plenty of rooms and was more than willing, if we cleared his parking lot, he was giving us rooms. We cleared his parking lot. We got a place to stay.
Yeah, we had a small issue with lodging also. We showed up to a very nice place. They were accommodating, but they had to throw us out because there was a convention going on or another event. So we basically had our group stay in, for better lack of words, a Section 8 place a couple miles away before they would let us come back to the place that we initially were in. So, telling the guys, hey, you just got done working a really long day and you might be in a room with no heat, and that happened. And yes, it was tough.
On-site points of contact is huge. We found out Buffalo went very smoothly. We had on-site points of contact, and they pretty much shifted with our crews, 12 on, 12 off. Everything was very smooth. Maryland was the same way. Washington, D.C., we had a different point of contact about every 4 hours, and it became very, very difficult, until the point where our crews got with on-site crews from the area, and they just went to work and did what they needed to do. Well, like I said, fuel, Willard requesting state provide. This is a conversation that I had actually with Jimmy Smith. He was having difficulties getting information from our emergency management, and I was out in a airport blower working, and my phone rings in a conversation, 15-minute conversation with him with, I'll give you fuel. I have support trucks here. Here's my locations of 13 shops. Here's contact information if you have a breakdown. And it went very, very smoothly at that point.
Yeah, what we have in New Jersey is, of course, we reach out, see if we can get in-state fueling. If we can't, I do have a contingency of about 200 commercial fuel cards that are a universal card that basically if they take in a MasterCard or any of that type, they'll accept this fuel card. So in our case of activations, we always make sure we send the person who's leading the team with a stash of these cards, just in case we run into fuel problems. Even in transit, we have to use them.
Parts. A lot of time, at least for Condoc, we're sending, and one of the pictures before was a bunch of our loader-mounted snow blowers. Specialized equipment parts. If you're sending specialized equipment, anything common repair part or breakdown part, we tried to send with it. It's like throwing darts in the dark. You don't know what's going to happen. Maybe nothing breaks, maybe everything breaks. But we tried to send at least our specialized stuff, and I also tried to provide my repair personnel with points of contacts or vendors in the local area where if they needed to source something, and they all have P cards, so they have the ability to purchase at any point.
Yeah, we ran into very similar things, and no matter how much you plan and think you have the trucks ready to go, when the New York loader backs into our skid steer and rips the radiator out of it, well, you got to get a radiator up there somehow. The problem was all the airports were shut when we were up in Boston. So by the time, we would have flown something in, we could pick it up from New Holland, PA, which is close enough by, and drive it up there and have it there the same day.
Permitting. This was a big one for us. Our people are very, very well schooled and can drive the truck, and they're pretty well, as long as they get to the state line. We don't cross the state lines on a regular basis. So now permitting, moving down the road, moving heavy equipment, oversized, over height, making that happen. I know I had to step in to make it happen, and then working with the neighboring states. Thank God we had a gentleman that took care of our permits, been around for a long time, and it was as easy as a conversation, and he made a couple phone calls and we got it done. But it's a big thing to consider.
We, on the other hand, we do have a section that handles all of our permitting. They weren't quite as on the ball as they should have been. We wanted to depart the next day, and he's telling me it's going to be a week before we have a permit. So we threw a cop in front, cop in back, and we took off. And if they wanted to give us a ticket, you had to talk to the troopers at both sides. So we did have some permitting issues. We did finally receive our permit as we were coming back from Boston.
Like I said earlier, in-area vendors, any information you can support your crews with on the front end, a point of contact, if you're sending John Deere loaders or Caterpillar loaders, if you can give an address and a phone number, it's a comfort level for them to know that there's something there. We sent road mechanics with as ground support for each crew running. So each crew, if we sent two crews, it had one road, one set of road mechanics, so we could shift them at 12 hours. Depending on how much equipment, that need to evaluate that to see where it needs to be. Is it 1, 2, 10?
Yeah, and that's where, that upfront question, we only sent two road mechanic trucks up to Boston because we figured we were going to be working as a team. Well, when they broke us up into 5 teams, you could see where this could quickly become a problem. So, road mechanics are huge, and, you need enough to have the support for all the crews out there.
travel route planning, this is something we did, or I did for our people going to Buffalo and Maryland. Basically give them their route at the pre-deployment pep talk, so to speak, and made sure they know to stay together, get there together. Somebody stops, somebody breaks down, everybody stops. Again, it's a comfort level thing for them.
Yeah, especially with convoying, communication's huge. I don't know how many of you have trunked radio systems. We're on a 700 megahertz trunk. Well, we had to switch all of our trucks from the trunk system over to the statewide comm system. Well, to get 30 trucks and to have the operator go, okay, well, you got to go over to this. We physically had to make sure that we were in each one of the trucks and made sure that they were all be able to communicate. The other thing with convoying, I don't know how many of you made the same mistake that New Jersey has for years and years. All of our tractor trailers, we've always built short haul, low horsepower, low fuel quantity trucks because we're only hauling within New Jersey. When we started convoying to Boston, a fairly short trip turned into a 12-hour trip because our trucks didn't pull those big hills. Our trucks didn't do the things that we anticipated. So convoying became a very tedious thing. My new truck spec, needless to say, has lots of horsepower and lots of fuel, but
Supply chain, basically, in contact with the requesting state to see if they have the ability to supply you with, parts, food, water, any of the things that may come up when people are there, and trying to get that information to your people on the, before they leave on pre-deployment.
I can tell you right now, this group was a huge support for me because I had all the contacts. Hey, we're crossing through each one of the states. I could reach out to the people and go, hey, we're coming through. If we have a problem, can you help me? And the outreach and support was huge.
GPS, crews working independently would, in unfamiliar areas, it'd be an assistance to them. At least if you can get an address, a street name, if they get sent in, it hasn't happened yet for us, but sent independently. This is something that we looked at, that we would provide at least each crew with one, so they can maneuver around efficiently without getting lost. There's nothing worse than having a whole crew, 12 or 15 people lost and 15 people mad.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what happens.
We keep 7 TomToms in my office, or GPS type devices, and even you think, oh, this is big deployment. No, this past winter we had to go into Newark. Well, we don't do cities. That the cities do the cities and we do the interstates. So when they go down to so and so and market, we have no idea where that is. So even TomToms within your own state may become a very useful tool.
This picture here is some of the Connecticut crews. You can kind of see our support trucks laying behind. This is Buffalo, New York in 2013. Meals. We set our crews to work 12-hour shifts, 24 hours around the clock, to be as effective as we can when we hit these states. Actually, both times we deployed, we had some issues. Guys were eating pretty much a cold sandwich for a couple days till we got it sorted out. So this is something that we're looking at. It's something like the hotel here. I mean, you can work through the hotel to get a hot meal catered, and if you set some times up, it's just something we looked at for the future.
Yeah, same type of situation. We're of course paying the employees per diem for lunch and dinner and all that type of stuff. And since they were out deployed, they were pretty much the person that was running that group would try to run down to the local McDonald's or something and help them out. But fortunate thing is, with Boston especially, we were working down the bowels of the town where people were very grateful to see us. They hadn't seen the roads in a long time, where they were literally knocking on the windows of the Bobcats and the trucks and going, hey, you want something to drink? Would you like some sandwiches? And that was great.
Logistically, crew meetings prior to each shift. Knowing that we were setting our crews up to run 24 hours, so 2 basic shifts, we had basically one of our supervisors on each shift, and they were the point of contact. And we told them to meet each day prior to, and going off of shift to make sure everybody's together, everybody's, any issues they could discuss, and move on. It's just, it gives it another comfort level, especially to the crew that's just probably been sleeping for 12 hours and knows they're out, and they may be going out at night in the dark, so.
Yeah, and on top of that, of course, number one logistics is safety. If you send 5 people down range, those 5 people better come back, and you better have good records to make sure that whatever you deploy all come back safely.
Transportation to work areas, it's something we thought of on the front end, at least for our first Buffalo deployment. We sent, crew cab pickups to shuffle crews, and we made sure that they had enough transportation to move everybody without having to move the heavy equipment every time they needed to shift out.
Similar type thing. We sent 15 passenger vans when they broke us up into multiple groups. We had to send up a couple more vans just for the additional support. One of the things that was great though was we had towns, which is actually very bright on their behalf, where once we got into the town, the mayor of the town came out and said, hey, if you need transport back, we'll make sure our town vans bring you back to the hotels. Their thought, I know, is we got the equipment here. They're going to continue working. If they leave tonight with the equipment, they may not be back tomorrow.
Deployment of Department of Emergency Management personnel to act as liaison with requesting state emergency management staff to assemble reimbursement documents as a mission goes on. This is something we didn't do, and we will send one of our, if it happens again, we'll send one of our planning people down to be a point of contact wherever they're stationed at, whatever hotel they're at, to manage that information. You're asking guys to work 12-hour shifts, on and off, and maintain that information. We had some inaccuracies and stuff that had to go backwards to take care of. So we'll send somebody down to manage that.
Yeah, we made sure that we sent people from our Office of Emergency Management just to basically keep their hand on everything and keep on compiling everything as the event was going on.
I'm sure your deploying personnel are trained to the level of responsibility according to National Incident Management. All our staff have gone through the training, and it's maintained, so that's pretty easy on our end.
Same thing with Jersey. Just, you don't want to have somebody that only has like an ICS 100 doing the role of somebody that should have an ICS 400. Make sure that they stay within their own focus or training level.
This falls under one of the prior things, is completing the travel or overtime paperwork prior to return home. Deployed personnel, when they go home, they know exactly how much they're going to get in their check, and if it's off, it ends up not being very pretty until it gets corrected. That part of sending what we call our planning personnel, that can all happen there. We have the ability to send them with a laptop and an air card so they can do anything in our system on site, and it maintains a better accuracy level.
While our OEM department was very good at tracking everything that happened, they did not do that latter part. So when all the employees returned back to New Jersey, it was kind of helter-skelter when they started putting in their paychecks, and because the oversight people that knew how many hours of overtime that they worked didn't necessarily relay that down to their crew supervisors. So everything became a little bit of a scramble. So that's one of our new things that we definitely will do moving forward.
This is something we learned, was to develop and maintain a mission-ready package for snow removal, i.e. storm work, whatever it is, and enter it as a ready resource in the EMac system. It just gives everybody the information. If you're going to activate an EMac, they'll know what you have available and what's there.
And New Jersey has the same thing.
This is actually Condoc crews. These are just some pictures at the end here of some of the stuff we did. Opening streets, residential neighborhoods in Buffalo, New York. Same thing as Jimmy said earlier, we went in these streets. That's a street that he's opening up. It doesn't look like it, but it is. These people were trapped in there for 5 to 6 days, and we basically opened the streets as the same thing. They were out there. Can I give you anything? Can I help you? whatever.
We initially, because we were bringing all of our crews in from different regions, and we decided to meet at the MetLife Stadium at a certain kickoff time, have our, this is what we're going to do, all of our briefings, everything with all of our crews before we deployed up to Boston.
This is, this last year in Maryland, this is, some of our condoc crews. It's like one of our blowers, one of our wing trucks that's following it as a chase vehicle. This is Buffalo, New York, condoc wing plow pushing back on one of the major thoroughfares. This is all stuff I'm sure everybody's seen before, but
One of the other things that we found very valuable with going to other events, we've been involved with, Katrina and a couple other things, is send a bird dog down. Well, Dave, the guy who you see with the New Jersey vest on the back, he was actually there the day before to scout out all the stuff and report back to me. Here's where the hotels are, here's where the restaurants are, here's where everything is. So we could document all this, that we could move that forward before the crews even left.
any questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.